The human said, 5 more minutes. The cat cubs heard. Begin Tactical Rise Attack Part 1. First contact with Fluff. The shuttle landed with a soft hiss on Station Orion 7. Ambassador. Una stepped out and took her first breath of recycled alien air. It smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. She had traveled for 3 weeks through empty space to reach this place. Now she stood at the edge of history. The Falari were waiting for her. Una had seen pictures of them before, but pictures did not capture the truth. They stood on 2 legs like humans, but everything else was different. Soft fur covered their bodies in shades of gray, orange, and white. Their ears were large and pointed, turning towards sounds like satellite dishes. Their eyes were huge, with vertical pupils that watched everything. They looked like cats that had learned to walk and build starships. A tall Falari female stepped forward. Her fur was silver with black stripes, and she wore armor that gleamed under the station lights. This was Commander Hana, assigned to escort Una during her stay. Ambassador, Hana said. Her voice was deep and smooth. Welcome to Station Orion 7. The High Matriarch waits for you. Una bowed her head in respect. Thank you, Commander. I am honored to be here. They walked through long corridors filled with Falari of all sizes. Some stopped to stare at Una. Humans were still rare in this part of space. The war with the Vec Armada had made humanity famous, but few Falari had seen a human in person. Una noticed that many Falari watched her with suspicion. Their tails twitched nervously. Their ears flattened against their heads. She understood their fear. Humans had destroyed an entire Vec fleet with nothing but courage and strange tactics. The Falari were proud warriors. They did not know if humans were friends or threats. The High Matriarch's chamber was enormous. Golden light filled the room from glowing panels in the ceiling. At the far end sat Matriarch Seal, the leader of all Falari. She was old, her fur faded to pale gray, but her eyes burned with sharp intelligence. Una knelt before her as custom demanded. Rise, human, Seal said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. We do not kneel to each other here. We stand as equals or not at all. Una stood and met the Matriarch's gaze. Then let us stand together, Matriarch. Earth seeks friendship with the Falari. Seal's whiskers twitched. Perhaps it was amusement. Perhaps it was doubt. We shall see. The negotiations will begin tomorrow. Tonight, you rest. Commander Hana led Una to her quarters. They walked for a long time, passing through areas of the station that grew louder and more chaotic. Una heard sounds she did not expect. High-pitched voices, tiny feet running, laughter. I must apologize, Hana said. Her ears pressed flat with embarrassment. The ambassador quarters are being repaired. A pipe burst last cycle. We have arranged alternative housing, but... She stopped before a large door. Strange symbols decorated its surface. Una recognized some of them from her studies. They meant young ones and protected space. This is the nursery wing, Una said. Yes. Hana looked uncomfortable. It was the only space available with proper life support for humans. You will have a private room, but you will share the common area with the cubs. Una smiled. Cubs? You mean children? Yes, 6 of them. They are from noble families, training to be warriors. Hana's tail lashed with worry. They can be energetic. I will assign guards to keep them away from you. No, Una said quickly. No guards. I like children. Hana stared at her as if she had said something insane. You like them? Very much. The commander shook her head slowly and opened the door. The room inside was warm and soft. Cushions covered the floor in bright colors. Climbing structures rose toward the ceiling. And in the middle of it all sat 6 small Falari cubs, frozen in the middle of a game. They were tiny, no bigger than human toddlers. Their fur was fluffy and wild, sticking out in all directions. Their eyes were impossibly large, taking up half their faces. They stared at Yuna with a mixture of terror and fascination. One cub was bolder than the others. Her fur was orange with white patches, and her tail stood straight up like a flag. She took a step toward Yuna while her littermates hid behind cushions. "What is it?" the brave cub asked. "This is a human," Hana said. "Her name is Ambassador Yuna. She will be staying here for a while. You will treat her with respect." The orange cub walked closer. She circled Yuna slowly, studying her from every angle. Her nose twitched as she sniffed the air. "She has no fur," the cub announced. "How does she stay warm?" "We wear clothes," Yuna said, kneeling down to be at the cub's level. "And our bodies make their own heat." The cub's eyes went wide. "You speak our language?" "I learned it." "What is your name?" "Miru." The cub puffed out her small chest proudly. "I am going to be a fleet commander when I grow up. I will have 100 ships." "That is a wonderful dream," Yuna said. "I am sure you will achieve it." Miru tilted her head. Behind her, the other cubs crept out from their hiding spots. They formed a half-circle around Yuna, keeping their distance, but unable to resist their curiosity. "Are you truly human?" one of them asked. "Did you really fight the Vek?" "I did not fight them myself," Yuna said. "But I knew people who did. Brave people. Were they warriors?" "Some were. Some were scientists. Some were teachers and farmers. When the Vek came, everyone fought." The cubs whispered to each other. In their culture, only trained warriors fought. The idea that farmers and teachers could defeat an enemy amazed them. That night, Yuna lay in her bed and tried to sleep. The room was too quiet. The bed was too soft. She missed the sound of rain on her window back on Earth. A dunk, small sound made her open her eyes. 6 pairs of glowing eyes stared at her from the darkness. The cubs had crept into her room and arranged themselves around her bed. They sat perfectly still, watching her like she was the most interesting thing in the universe. Miru sat at the foot of the bed, her tail wrapped around her paws. "We are guarding you," she explained in a serious whisper. "In case the Vek come." Yuna smiled in the darkness. "Thank you, Miru. I feel very safe now." She closed her eyes and, surrounded by 6 small protectors, finally fell asleep. The negotiations could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, she had made her first friends among the stars. The human said, 5 more minutes. The cat cubs heard. Begin Tactical Rise Attack Part 2. The discovery of 5 more minutes, Svendays. Passed on Station Orion 7. Yuna spent her mornings and afternoons in the negotiation chamber, talking with Matriarch Seal and her advisors about trade routes and mutual defense. The talks were slow and difficult. The Falari did not trust easily. They asked many questions and gave few answers. But the evenings belonged to the cubs. Every night, Yuna returned to the nursery wing exhausted from hours of careful diplomacy. Every night, 6 fluffy bodies rushed to greet her at the door. They had stopped being afraid of her on the 2nd day. By the 4th day, they treated her like she belonged to them. Miru was still their leader. She had decided that Yuna was her personal responsibility. Wherever Yuna went in the nursery, Miru followed. When Yuna sat down, Miru climbed into her lap. When Yuna ate dinner, Miru sat beside her and explained which foods were best. The other cubs had their own ways of claiming the human. Tay, a gray cub with 1 white ear, liked to sit on Yuna's shoulders. Bomi, the smallest of the litter, always wanted to hold Yuna's hand. The twins, Duri and Nari, fought over who got to sleep closest to her at night. And June, the quietest cub, simply followed Yuna everywhere and watched everything she did with serious eyes. The nursery caretakers did not know what to think. They had never seen cubs attach themselves so quickly to a stranger. One old caretaker named Grandmother Suk watched with narrow eyes but said nothing. Yuna learned many things about Filari culture from the cubs. She learned that they started warrior training at a very young age. They practiced fighting and hunting and tactics before they could properly read. Strength and speed and cleverness were valued above all else. She also learned that Filari did not sleep the way humans did. "You sleep so long," Miru complained one evening. "Every night, you close your eyes for 8 whole hours. We only need 4. Humans need more rest," Yuna explained. She was lying on a pile of cushions while the cubs arranged themselves around her like a living blanket. "Our bodies work differently." "That is inefficient," Miru said with the confidence of a child who had just learned a new word. "Warriors should be ready at all times." "Maybe," Yuna said, yawning. "But I am not a warrior. I am a diplomat. My weapon is words, not claws." Miru did not look convinced. In her mind, everyone should be a warrior. Yuna's eyes grew heavy. The warmth of the cubs pressed against her made sleep come easily. Within minutes, she was breathing slowly and deeply, lost in dreams of home. The cubs watched her sleep with great interest. "She is completely unaware," Tay whispered from his spot on a nearby cushion. "If we were enemies, we could defeat her easily right now." "She trusts us," Bomi said. Her small voice carried a hint of wonder. "She trusts us to protect her while she sleeps." "Foolish," Duri said. "Brave," Nari argued. June said nothing, but his eyes never left Yuna's peaceful face. The cubs fell asleep too, curled in a pile of fur and warmth around their human. This had become their routine. It felt natural now, like something that had always been true. Morning came too soon. Station Orion 7 ran on a strict schedule. Lights in all public areas turned bright at the same time each day. Alarms sounded in military quarters. The cubs' nursery, however, used a gentler system. Soft chimes played through hidden speakers, growing slowly louder over several minutes. The cubs woke instantly. Their ears perked up at the first chime. Their eyes snapped open. Within seconds, they were on their feet, ready for the day. This was how Filari children were trained. When the call came, you answered. No delay. No hesitation. Yuna did not wake up. The cubs gathered around her, confused. The chimes were playing. The lights were growing brighter. Yet the human remained still, her eyes closed, her breathing unchanged. Miru poked Yuna's arm with one small paw. "Ambassador, the morning has come. You must rise." Yuna made a sound that was not really a word. She rolled over, pulled a cushion over her head, and mumbled something into the fabric. What did she say? Tay asked. Bomi, who was closest to Yuna's head, listened carefully. "I think she said, 5 more minutes." The cubs looked at each other. 5 more minutes, Miru repeated slowly. "What does that mean?" "Perhaps it is a human measurement of time," June suggested. He had been studying human culture in his spare moments, reading whatever information the station computers would give him. But why would she announce it? Duri asked. "Why tell us she needs 5 minutes?" The cubs were silent. This was a puzzle. In their world, announcing your intentions was a tactical choice. You told enemies your plans only if you wanted them to react. You told allies your plans so they could prepare. Miru's eyes went wide. "It is an invitation," she said. The other cubs stared at her. "Think about it," Miru continued, her voice growing excited. "She knows we are here. She knows we are awake. She tells us she will remain defenseless for 5 minutes. She is inviting us to practice our ambush tactics." "That makes no sense," Nari said. "It makes perfect sense," Miru argued. "She is teaching us. She said she is not a warrior, but maybe this is how humans train their young. They let them practice on vulnerable targets. The idea spread through the group like fire. Of course, the human was not being lazy or foolish. She was offering them a gift, a chance to learn, a test of their skills. "We have 5 minutes," Miru announced. She was no longer a cub playing games. She was a commander preparing for battle. "We must use them wisely." The cubs scattered. Tay climbed to the highest point in the room, a shelf near the ceiling that overlooked Yuna's sleeping spot. From there, he could see everything. He would be the eyes of the operation. Duri and Nari took positions on either side of Yuna's cushion pile. They pressed themselves flat against the floor, hiding behind larger cushions, becoming nearly invisible. Bomi, being the smallest, crawled under the cushions themselves. She wormed her way through the soft mountain until she was directly beneath Yuna, ready to strike upward. Jun stationed himself at the door. If the human tried to escape, he would be the last line of defense. Miru herself climbed onto a low platform behind Yuna's head. She crouched there, muscles tense, eyes fixed on her target. Her tail flicked back and forth with barely contained energy. They waited. 1 minute passed. Yuna did not move. 2 minutes. The cubs remained perfectly still. Their training kept them focused. 3 minutes. Tay signaled from his high position. All units were in place. 4 minutes. Bomi nearly sneezed from the dust under the cushions, but managed to hold it in. 5 minutes. Miru raised her small paw, ready to give the signal. The 5 minutes were over. The human had given them exactly the time she promised. Now it was time to show her what Falari cubs could do. Miru's paw came down. The tactical rise attack had begun. The human said, 5 more minutes. The cat cubs heard. Begin tactical rise attack part 3. The tactical rise. Attack. Yuna was dreaming of her grandmother's garden when the universe exploded. Something heavy landed on her stomach. Something else hit her legs. A third weight crashed onto her shoulders. Before her eyes could even open, she was buried under a storm of fur, paws, and excited chirping sounds. She screamed. It was not a dignified scream. It was not the scream of an ambassador who represented all of humanity. It was the scream of someone who had been peacefully asleep 1 second and attacked by 6 small predators the next. The cub showed no mercy. Miru led the charge from above, landing directly on Yuna's chest. She wrapped her small arms around Yuna's neck in what she probably thought was a deadly hold. Tay dropped from his high position onto Yuna's legs, pinning them down with his body weight. Duri and Nari attacked from the sides, grabbing Yuna's arms and pulling them away from her body. Bomi erupted from beneath the cushions like a fluffy volcano, popping up right next to Yuna's face with a triumphant squeak. Jun, ever serious, stood guard at the door, making sure their target could not escape. "Victory!" Miru shouted. "The human has been defeated." Yuna stopped screaming. She lay there, breathing hard, her heart pounding, and tried to understand what was happening. 6 small faces stared down at her with enormous eyes full of pride and joy. She had not been murdered. She had been cuddled aggressively. "What?" Yuna said slowly. "Are you doing?" "The tactical rise attack," Miru explained. She had not moved from her position on Yuna's chest. "You invited us to practice, and we did. We waited exactly 5 minutes, as you instructed. Then we struck." Yuna blinked several times. "I invited you? You said 5 more minutes. You gave us time to prepare our ambush. This is how humans train their young, yes?" Understanding hit Yuna like a second attack. She remembered mumbling something when the cubs tried to wake her. She had been half asleep, not thinking. 5 more minutes. A phrase she had said thousands of times in her life. A phrase every human said. But the Falari cubs had never heard it before. They had no idea what it meant. So they made up their own meaning. Yuna began to laugh. It started as a small sound, a chuckle deep in her chest. But it grew. It grew until her whole body shook with it. Tears streamed down her face. She laughed so hard that she could barely breathe. The cubs watched her with concern. "Is she broken?" Tay asked. "Perhaps we were too rough," Bomi worried. No, Yuna gasped. She tried to control herself, but another wave of laughter hit her. "I am fine. I am just... You are wonderful. You are absolutely wonderful." She reached out and pulled the cubs into a proper hug. They squirmed at first, surprised by the gesture. Falari showed affection differently. But then they relaxed. The human was warm. Her arms were soft. Being held like this felt nice. "So this is not how humans train their young?" Miru asked, her voice muffled against Yuna's shoulder. "No," Yuna admitted. "When humans say 5 more minutes, we mean we want to sleep a little longer. We are asking for more rest." The cubs were silent as they processed this information. "That is strange," Dory said. "Why would you announce that you are going to be defenseless?" Nari asked. "What if enemies heard you?" Yuna smiled. "Humans do not usually worry about enemies when we are sleeping. We feel safe in our homes." This seemed to confuse the cubs even more. The Falari were always ready for danger. Their history was filled with wars and threats. The idea of feeling completely safe was foreign to them. "But," Yuna continued, "I liked your interpretation better." Miru's ears perked up. "You did?" "Yes, it was creative. You took something you did not understand and made it into something useful. That is the sign of good tactical thinking." The cubs practically glowed with pride. Praise from the human meant more than they expected. She had fought the Vec, after all. Her people had won an impossible war. If she said they did well, then they had done well. From that morning on, everything changed. The next day, Yuna returned from negotiations exhausted. She had been arguing for hours about border rights and defense treaties. Her head hurt. Her eyes burned. All she wanted was sleep. She collapsed onto her cushion pile and closed her eyes. "Ambassador," Miru's voice came from somewhere nearby. "The evening meal is ready." 5 more minutes, Yuna mumbled automatically. She realized her mistake immediately. Her eyes snapped open, but it was too late. The cubs had already begun to scatter. She could see them taking positions around the room, their movements quick and silent. "Wait," Yuna said. "I did not mean 5 minutes," Miru announced to her team. "Begin preparations." Yuna considered getting up. She could simply stand and walk away. The cubs would not attack if she was awake and moving. That would not be fair to them, but she saw the excitement in their eyes. She saw how carefully they planned, how seriously they took the exercise. This was not just a game to them. This was training. This was bonding. This was something they would remember forever. Yuna closed her eyes and waited. The attack came exactly on time. It was better than yesterday. The cubs had learned from their first attempt. Tay dropped more quietly. Duri and Nari coordinated their approach. Bomi managed to emerge from beneath the cushions without making any sound. Yuna let herself be conquered. The days that followed fell into a pattern. Every morning, the cubs woke Yuna with their tactical rise attack. Every evening, when she said 5 more minutes before dinner, they attacked again. They practiced different approaches. They tried new strategies. They kept score of how long it took them to completely pin the human down. Yuna learned to sleep more lightly. She learned to anticipate the attacks. Sometimes, she even tried to escape, rolling away at the last second or hiding under her blankets. This only made the cubs more determined. They loved the challenge. Grandmother Suk, the old caretaker, watched all of this with growing interest. "You are good for them," she told Yuna one evening. "They have learned more about teamwork in the past week than they did in the previous month." "I have not taught them anything," Una said. They figured out the tactical rise attack on their own. Exactly. Grandmother Sook's eyes were warm. You gave them something to figure out. You gave them a puzzle and trusted them to solve it. That is the best kind of teaching. Una looked at the cubs, who were currently arguing about whether tomorrow's attack should come from the left or the right. They had grown so much in such a short time, not just in their tactical skills, but in their confidence. In their joy, she had come to Station Orion 7 to build an alliance between nations. She had not expected to build a family among the stars, but here she was, adopted by 6 fluffy warriors who attacked her every morning and evening with perfect dedication. Una smiled and said the word she knew would set everything in motion. 5 more minutes. The cubs scrambled into position. She would not have it any other way. The human said, 5 more minutes. The cat cubs heard. Begin tactical rise attack. 4. The matriarch observes. High matriarch Seal sat alone in her private chamber, watching screens. She had ruled the Falari for 32 years. She had fought in 6 wars. She had negotiated with species from across the galaxy. She thought she understood power and strength and what made a civilization great, but the images on her screens confused her. Security cameras covered every part of Station Orion 7. This was normal. A leader needed to know what happened in her territory. Seal reviewed the recordings every evening, looking for threats, for secrets, for anything that might affect her people. What she found in the nursery wing was none of those things. She watched the human ambassador play with the cubs. Not just tolerate them, not just allow them near her, but actually play. Una built towers out of cushions and let the cubs knock them down. She played a game called hide and seek that made the cubs better at stealth. She told stories about Earth, about oceans and mountains and a yellow sun. She let 6 small Falari attack her every morning and evening without complaint. Seal rewound the recordings and watched them again. She looked for signs of strategy, for hidden motives, for the careful manipulation she expected from diplomats. She found nothing. The humans seemed genuinely happy with the cubs. She laughed with them. She held them when they were tired. She dried their tears when they fell and hurt themselves. Interesting, Seal murmured to herself. Commander Hana entered the chamber and bowed. You wanted to see me, matriarch? Yes, sit. Seal gestured to a chair beside her. Tell me about the human ambassador. Your personal observations. Hana sat carefully. She was uncomfortable with the request. Personal observations were not normally valued in military reports. But the matriarch had asked. She is unusual, Hana said. She does not behave like other diplomats I have met. She does not push for advantage. She does not speak with hidden meanings. When she says something, she means exactly what she says. And her time with the cubs? Hana hesitated. At first, I thought it was a mistake to house her there. I expected complaints, demands for different quarters. But she seemed pleased by the arrangement. Pleased? Yes, matriarch. She told me that she likes children. I thought she was being polite, but I believe now that she meant it. Seal turned back to the screens. She found a recording from earlier that day. In it, Una sat on the floor while the cubs climbed over her like she was a mountain. Miru stood on her head. Bomi hung from her arm. The twins tried to push her over while Tay and June watched from safe positions. Una was laughing. The cubs have attached themselves to her, Seal observed. This has never happened before with an outsider. No, matriarch. The caretakers are amazed. They say the cubs have improved greatly in the past 2 weeks. Their teamwork is better. Their strategic thinking is sharper. Because of the human? It seems so. She gave them something to work toward. A puzzle to solve. Seal nodded slowly. She had read the reports about the tactical rise attack. At first, she had thought it was foolish. A game, nothing more. But the results spoke for themselves. The cubs were learning faster than any litter in recent memory. Not because Yuna trained them, but because she trusted them. She gave them a challenge and believed they could meet it. "There is something else," Hana said. Her voice was cautious now. "Something that happened yesterday? Tell me." Junior Officer Kang visited the nursery wing. He wanted to inspect the quarters to ensure they met security standards. During the inspection, young Maru ran past him and accidentally knocked over his data tablet. Seal's eyes narrowed. Officer Kang was known for his strict discipline. He did not tolerate disrespect, even from cubs. What did he do? He shouted at her, called her careless and undisciplined, said she was a disgrace to her family name. Hana paused. He raised his hand as if to strike her. Seal felt her claws extend slightly. Striking cubs was not acceptable in Falari culture, not even by officers. And then, the humans stepped between them. The chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of electronics. Seal stared at Hana. "She is half his size," Seal said. Unarmed, soft. How did she expect to stop him? She did not try to stop him physically. She simply stood there, between him and Miru, and spoke. Hana's voice carried something like wonder. She said, "They are children. Speak to them with respect, or do not speak to them at all." What happened? Officer Kang backed down. He left the nursery without another word. Seal leaned back in her chair. She had not expected this. Humans were known for many things. Their endurance, their creativity, their strange ability to bond with other species. But this was something different. She protected a child that was not her own, Seal said softly. A child of another species. She put herself in danger for a cub she has only known for 2 weeks. "Yes, matriarch." "Why?" Hana did not answer. She did not know Seol thought about everything she had seen. The games, the attacks, the laughter, the protection. It formed a picture in her mind, a picture of what humans truly were. They were not just survivors. They were not just clever or determined. They were something more fundamental. They were caregivers. Humans took care of things. They adopted pets from other worlds. They formed bonds with artificial intelligences. They planted gardens on space stations and cried when flowers died. They protected children who were not their own, not because it benefited them, but because it was right. This was why they had won against the Vec. Not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they cared so much about what they were protecting that they would do anything to keep it safe. "The negotiations," Seal said suddenly. "Have we reached an agreement yet?" Hana looked surprised by the change in topic. "No, matriarch. There are still many points of discussion. The advisors believe it will take several more weeks." "No." Seal stood up. "I have seen enough. I will speak with the human tomorrow and conclude the negotiations personally. Matriarch? Is something wrong?" Seal walked to the window of her chamber. Outside, stars burned in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, threats gathered. Wars waited to be fought. The galaxy was dangerous, and the Falari needed allies they could trust. She had been looking for strength. She had been looking for power. She had been asking herself whether humans could be useful in battle. She had been asking the wrong questions. "Nothing is wrong, Commander." Seal's voice was calm. "I simply know what I need to know now. Any species that protects the young of another race, any species that earns the love of our cubs through patience and kindness, is worthy of alliance. Because they are kind? Because kindness is strength." Seal turned to face Hana. "The humans do not help our cubs because they want something from us. They help because that is who they are. That is more valuable than any fleet or weapon. Hannah stood and bowed. She did not fully understand, but she trusted her matriarch. I will arrange the meeting for tomorrow, she said. Good? And Hannah? Yes, matriarch. Seal smiled, a rare expression on her ancient face. Tell the nursery caretakers that Ambassador Yuna may stay in the nursery wing as long as she wishes. The cubs have made their choice. I will not separate them from their human. Understood, matriarch. Hannah left, and Seal turned back to the window. Somewhere in the station, 6 cubs were probably planning their next attack on a sleeping human. Somewhere, an ambassador from a distant world was letting herself be conquered by children because it made them. Abby.Seol had ruled for 32 years. She had seen many things, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The alliance would be signed tomorrow. The real alliance, she realized, had already been formed in the nursery wing, one tactical rise attack at a time. The human said, 5 more minutes. The cat cubs heard. Begin tactical rise attack part 5. Legacy of the rise attack 10. Years had passed since Ambassador Yuna first set foot on Station Orion-7. The galaxy had changed in those 10 years. The Human-Falari Alliance had become the strongest partnership in known space. Together, they had stopped 2 invasions, opened dozens of trade routes, and built a network of stations that connected their worlds. What started as a simple treaty had grown into something deeper, something like family. Yuna's shuttle approached the station now, carrying her toward the anniversary celebration. She was older. Gray streaked her black hair. Lines marked her face from years of smiling and worrying and working. But her eyes were still bright, still curious, still full of warmth. She had been back to Station Orion 7 many times over the years, but this visit was special. 10 years of alliance. 10 years of friendship. 10 years since 6 small cubs had taught her what it meant to be trusted. The shuttle landed. Yuna stepped out and took a deep breath of familiar recycled air. It still smelled like metal and flowers. It still felt like a second home. Commander Hannah waited for her at the dock. Hannah had not changed much. A few more scars. A few more medals on her uniform. But her eyes were still sharp, and her tail still twitched when she was amused. Ambassador, Hannah said with a slight bow. Welcome back. Thank you, Commander. It is good to be here. They walked together through corridors that Yuna knew by heart. Falari of all ages stopped to stare as she passed. Some of them bowed. Some of them waved. A few young cubs pressed their faces against windows to catch a glimpse of the famous human. The celebration begins in 3 hours, Hannah said. The matriarch wishes to see you first. Of course. How is she? Old, Hannah's voice softened. Tired, but she refused to miss this day. She said she has been waiting 10 years to see you again. They reached the matriarch's private chamber. The doors opened, and Yuna stepped inside. Zriol sat by the window, wrapped in soft blankets. Her fur was completely white now, faded by age. Her movements were slow. But when she saw Yuna, her eyes lit up with ancient fire. Human, Seal said. Her voice was weaker than before, but it still carried authority. You came. I would not miss this for anything. Yuna crossed the room and knelt beside the old matriarch. How are you, Seal? Dying. Seal said it calmly, without fear. My time is nearly finished, but I wanted to see you once more before the end. Yuna took Seal's frail paw in her hands. I wish I had visited more often. You were busy building something that will last longer than either of us. Seal squeezed Yuna's hand with surprising strength. The alliance is your legacy, and mine. When we are both gone, it will continue. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. 2 old friends who had changed history. The cubs, Seal said finally. Your cubs. They are here today. Yuna's heart lifted. All of them? All 6. They traveled from across the territory to see you. Seal smiled, her whiskers twitching. They are not cubs anymore, of course. They are warriors and leaders and heroes. But they still speak of you often. They still remember. I remember too. Hannah stepped forward. Ambassador, we should go. The ceremony will begin soon, and there are people who wish to see you first. Yuna stood and bowed to Seal. I will come back after the celebration. We have much to talk about. Yes. Seal's eyes were already closing. We do. Now go. Your family is waiting. Yuna followed Hannah out of the chamber and through more corridors. They were heading toward the main hall where the ceremony would take place. Dignitaries from a dozen worlds had gathered to celebrate the anniversary. Yuna would have to give speeches and shake hands and be diplomatic. But first, Hannah led her to a smaller room off the main corridor. She opened the door and stepped aside. They wanted to see you privately, Hannah said. Before everything begins. Yuna stepped through the door. 6 figures stood inside. They were not cubs anymore. They were adults, tall and strong and magnificent. Uniforms covered their bodies, displaying ranks and honors earned through years of service. They looked like the warriors they had trained to become, but when they saw Yuna, their ears perked forward. Their tails rose high, and their enormous eyes filled with a joy that belonged to children, not soldiers. Ambassador Yuna, Miru said. She stood at the front of the group, just as she had always done. Her orange and white fur was sleek now, well-groomed. Fleet Commander insignia gleamed on her chest. She had achieved her childhood dream. Miru, Yuna's voice cracked. Look at you. All of you. Tay stepped forward. He was huge now, nearly twice Yuna's size. The gray cub who had once sat on her shoulders could now lift her with one arm. We've waited 10 years for this. We wanted to thank you, Bomi said. She was still the smallest of the group, but her voice carried quiet authority. She commanded an intelligence division now. For everything you taught us. I did not teach you anything, Yuna said, repeating words she had said long ago. You figured it out yourselves. Dori and Nari exchanged a look that Yuna remembered well. The twins had served together on the same ship for 8 years. They had never been separated. You taught us that strength can be gentle, Dori said. That patience is power, Nari added Dajun. Still the quietest of the group, simply stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Yuna. The others followed. 6 grown Falari warriors embraced a single human, holding her the way she had once held them. Yuna cried. She could not help it. These were her cubs. No matter how old they got, no matter how many battles they fought, they would always be hers. When the embrace ended, Miru stepped back and smiled with all her teeth showing. We have something planned for you, she said. A surprise. At the end of the ceremony, should I be worried? Yuna asked, laughing through her tears. Perhaps. Miru's eyes sparkled. You did say something when you arrived at the spaceport earlier. The docking attendant recorded it. Yuna tried to remember. She had been tired from the long journey. She had wanted to rest before the ceremony. She had mumbled something to her assistant about delay. Oh no. I said 5 more minutes, Yuna realized. Before getting off the shuttle. Yes. Miru's voice was sweet with anticipated victory. You did. The ceremony was beautiful. Speeches were given. Treaties were celebrated. Matriarch Seal appeared briefly to address the crowd, speaking of friendship across the stars. Yuna stood before representatives of dozens of species and talked about what the alliance had meant to her people. And then, at the very end, Miru took the stage. There's one more tradition to honor today, Miru announced to the gathered crowd. A tradition that began 10 years ago in the nursery wing of this very station. a tradition that has since been adopted into Falari military training across our territory. Screens around the hall flickered to life. They showed recordings from a decade ago. Yuna watched herself, younger and less gray, lying on a pile of cushions while 6 tiny cubs launched their attack. The crowd laughed. Some of the aliens from other worlds looked confused. But every Falari in the room knew what was coming. The tactical rise attack, Miru continued, was born when Ambassador Yuna taught us that 5 more minutes was an invitation. Today, we honored that lesson. She turned to look at Yuna, who stood at the edge of the stage. Ambassador, Miru said formally, you gave us 5 minutes at the spaceport. Those 5 minutes have passed. Miru, Yuna said, backing away slowly. We are at a formal ceremony. There are diplomats here. Yes, Miru smiled. They should see what the alliance is built on. She raised her paw. 6 figures moved. They were faster now. Stronger. They had trained for a decade since that first attack in the nursery. But their approach was the same. Tay came from above, dropping from a balcony. Duri and Nari flanked from the sides. Bomi appeared from somewhere impossible. June blocked the exit, and Miru led the charge directly at Yuna. The ambassador disappeared beneath a pile of fur and triumph. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then the Falari began to cheer. They understood. This was not an attack. This was love. This was family. This was a tradition that had started with a sleepy human and 6 curious cubs, and had grown into something that would last forever. When the pile finally separated, Yuna lay on the stage floor, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. 6 grown warriors sat around her, purring with satisfaction. Victory, Miru announced, as she had announced so many times before. The human has been defeated. Always, Yuna gasped. You always defeat me. She reached out and pulled him close one last time. Her cubs, her warriors, her family died in the years that followed. The story spread across the galaxy. Other species heard about the tactical rise attack and the human who had invented it. They did not always understand, but they saw the results. They saw an alliance built on trust and play and love. They saw that strength could be gentle, that patience was power, and that sometimes the fiercest warriors were the ones who let themselves be conquered by those they cherished. At the celebration banquet that night, Matriarch Seal raised her glass one final time. To humanity, she said, her ancient voice carrying through the hall. Who taught us that 5 more minutes is not weakness? It is an invitation, and the Falari will always answer. The crowd raised their glasses. And somewhere 6 cubs, no. 6 warriors smiled at their human and began planning tomorrow's attack. Some traditions, after all, should never end.